58 Cold start. Self-propelled howitzers and tanks, you have denied them. Yes, I'm just providing a reference. I think what they need most are anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft weapons, not these expensive weapons. 120mm self-propelled anti-tank guns. Staff Ding was shocked. He saw a very unique equipment, similar pure anti-tank weapons, except for the Chinese army, few other countries developed and equipped. Moreover, this kind of weapon is not within the scope of Pakistan's requirements, and it was added by Lin Huaisheng at his own discretion. Enhancing the anti-tank capability of the artillery is the top priority. This weapon is enough to penetrate all the main battle tanks in India, has a certain degree of mobility, and, we can afford this weapon. He does not seem ready to accept it all. Pakistan's request, or this is what the above means. That is to say, there are still reservations for Pakistan's assistance. Well, the superiors also have to live within their means. The fighters given this time are all old ones with more than half of the engine life, and the missiles are R-27 and PL-8 in stock. We keep these missiles. If so, it will cost a lot of money to extend the life of the seeker, so it is better to give them favors and shoot them out in a short time. However, this irrational bombardment by India will definitely make the limit of aid more beneficial to Pakistan. By the way, who is the newly appointed commander of the 31st Army, Spanga? According to the latest information obtained by the Pakistani side, he may serve as the commander-in-chief of a front army. That's what you're asking. I also have some understanding of him. Spanga studied armored theory in Britain and Russia when he was young, and he wrote a lot after returning to China. You must have heard the name Cold Start, which is actually thanks to him. At present, this theory represents the highest level of Indian Army's combat theory. Cold Start. Staff Ding said with a blank expression that he had never heard of the word. It's no wonder that in theoretical research, many domestic officers are staring at the United States and don't care much about the ideas of Indian soldiers. But fortunately, Lin Huaisheng has been burying his head in sorting out the Indian Army's army-building thoughts over the years. The so-called cold start is simply a preemptive attack. Preemptive? Military or political? Of course, it is a two-pronged approach. This is like a blitzkrieg or a deep offensive theory. War preparations, before the outside world completes the sanctions consensus, launch a decisive battle. Military, of course, relying on the assault force of armored troops, but very much emphasis on the cover of air and land integration. Sounds, very, the army is adventurism. So he has Singh's trust, and I always thought he was in Singh's mind as the candidate to succeed Prasad as Army Chief of Staff, but he personally may not be willing to be this Chief of Staff. He is a frontline commanding general. Is this the original intention of your proposal to provide self-propelled anti-tank guns to the Pakistani side? Staff Officer Ding said. His opinion seems to be on point. This was beyond Lin Huaisheng's expectations, because before, Lao Ding just kept asking questions and rarely expressed his views. Indeed, that's true. I just guessed by common sense. The Type 89 self-propelled anti-tank gun was a kind of weapon designed to defend against Soviet tank groups that went against common sense. In fact, only Germany in the world produced a large number of similar weapons. Old Ding said. It's not surprising, people who haven't experienced the threat of Soviet armored swarms would not have designed this kind of weapon that subverts the trinity of defense, mobility, and firepower. You're right. This is a kind of counterintuitive, excellent defensive weapons. If the Pakistan Army can fully understand the current situation, they will not be delusional to use their armored units to collide with Indian tank divisions in the desert areas of Punjab. Will there be other in our country this time? Countermeasures? I don't know, but I think there should be some new measures in addition to the protests from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, maybe at sea. We'll wait and see. South China Sea, a certain area, underwater 120 meters. A Chinese nuclear submarine is moving slowly. In the command cabin of the submarine, Captain Marin was standing behind the podium, waiting for the news from each cabin. Around him, many people looked at each other and waited for his further instructions. The engine fire is spreading, and the fire in the clutch compartment is temporarily controlled, but from the second deck, the front and rear compartments have been isolated by the fire. The situation of the steam generator in the reactor. The captain asked calmly. The secondary circuit has been blocked, the steam pressure is falling, but the cooling pump is running normally, and the backup power can be used at any time. Radiation leakage. Moderate gamma rays in the rear compartments, mild radiation levels in the front, no detection when the neutron is reached. It can be seen that the moderator and the control rod are still working. The co-captain said as he sat aside and looked at the monitor. The damage control situation. There is no water in the cabin for the time being, but it is recommended to emerge to the surface urgently. No, this is a war zone, you can't float to the surface, but temporarily float to the depth of the antenna. The captain looked around and said. After he finished speaking, he supported the pipe on the head with his hand, and the submarine immediately began to rise at a relatively large angle. Continue to report the fire situation. The second floor of the engine has been controlled, and the automatic fire extinguishing device has worked. A voice came from the walkie-talkie, and everyone in the command cabin looked relieved. How is the condition of the wounded? All are being examined. The minor injuries are concentrated in the aisle, and some of the severe burns need to be isolated. But I am understaffed here. Someone spoke on the walkie-talkie. Quickly reduce the fire area, move the wounded to the front, and I will send someone over. Marin looked around, and his eyes fell on the most leisurely deputy captain, Sun Xiangdong. Sun Xiangdong, you need someone to help deal with the wounded at the back. You can go. If necessary, you can also get injured and let them bandage it. Okay, I'll go. Go back. Listen, the co-captain is coming here, second-degree burns from the steam, serious head injuries, you should bandage him. Understood. The fire is completely under control, the reactor has not detected a serious leak, the secondary circuit the pipeline is being checked quickly, and it is expected that 30% of the power will be restored in 10 minutes. Someone in the command cabin clapped their hands, and everyone's nervous expression seemed to relax. Only Captain Marin still looked solemn. He took out the stopwatch from his pocket and glanced at it. The fire extinguishing time exceeded the average time by about 35 seconds. I announce that the exercise is over and the results are very mediocre, he said. Everyone laughed in relief. A few of them started chatting, and Marin shook his head and walked over to the periscope. Captain, there are fleet long-wave messages in the translation room. Someone spoke on the walkie-talkie. I'll be right here. He walked out of the command cabin. The crew members who played the wounded were still crowding the aisle and laughing. It seemed that he didn't take the exercise seriously enough. It took a little effort for Marin to move to the translation room. Anxious, these ultra-long-wave communications are very slow. He sat in the translation room for a long time before the complete telegram was sent and received. The telegram surprised him. When he left the port, he never expected that a real war would be waiting for him, and it was located in an unfamiliar place. Indian Ocean.